All right. I'd like to call to order the Urban Renewal Commission meeting tonight for November the 16th, 2021. We are having a retreat today, and needless to say, I am very giddy about it and looking forward to our discussion tonight. Mr. Wiley, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Doug Neely.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Chair Denise McGriff.
Present.
And Vice Chair Sean Cross is excused today.
All right. Well, he will be missed, that's for sure. Maybe he's watching at home. All right, so we have one item on our, do we have any citizen comments tonight? I see that the audience is full. All right, we have no citizen comments tonight. I didn't want to forget that. We have one item on our agenda this evening, and it is continuation of our discussion regarding the vision statement and a framework for decision-making for the Urban Renewal Area Plan. And I'd like to turn it over to Mr. James Graham and Mr. Tony Conkle. Oh, he's got the clicker.
Good evening. Thank you. Oh, the clicker. Thank you. Can't live without the clicker. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Urban Renewal Commission. Tonight, as the chair stated, we continue our work on the visioning statement and the framework for making decisions for the Urban Renewal District. There we go. Well, I think that did that wrong. There we go. Thank you. What you see before you is actually the agenda for tonight's discussion. Our agenda has been divided into several categories, and for our discussion purposes. We start with the vision statement review, and then we continue from there after some discussion there, moving forward to our framework for decision making, which would include several items in and of itself. Program policies and guidelines, disposition and development agreement, or DDA. We'll talk about the due diligence process, and then project scoring. So that's this is the agenda layout. In terms of the vision statement, as you remember, at the last meeting, we took some time to list not only to talk about the vision statement, but also to list elements, goals and elements thereof. And as you can see, some of those elements, all of those elements and goals are on the wall here, but also in your packet. The first item in terms of the vision statement, we talked about livability. And I just wanted to make sure that we capture all of your ideas. And as you know, livability is about building community amenities that enhance the quality of life through action to improve local environments and provide safe conditions in places where people live. And it includes a variety of things that you all listed the other day, the other time we met. And we'll take a moment for you to just to review those. I won't read them unless you would prefer me to, but I will let you review them, and we'll open it for discussion as to whether or not we've captured all of your ideas.
Please go right ahead if people have something they'd like to contribute. We'll just have a free flow of discussion this evening. That's okay with everybody?
Can you remove the word "the" in front of each one of those bullets?
Oh, sure. Of course.
So that it matches all the others?
So do we have general agreement? We talked about the 4 topic areas which are listed on our big pad paper sheets over there, and I can see almost all of them from here.
But the first item is up is livability. If there are no questions, we can go forward.
Let's just keep moving forward.
All right. The next item is, would be tourism opportunities. And under tourism opportunities, creating an environment that offers amenities that establish a sense of vitality, excitement, and wonder attracts visitors during the day and the night. The district will offer the following amenities that are designed to solidify the city's brand as being Oregon's hometown. And there are 12 elements here.
Did we capture all the ones from the sheet, Commissioner Smith?
I haven't recognized any missing. I think they've done a good job of actually recording most of it.
It is.
I'm still looking. What did you say, Doug?
No, it was agreement.
Let's see, the tour, okay, I can see the tourism from here, yes.
And my only comment on that one is, I don't know if we need the word ferries, where if we just put river transportation,
yeah.
it's more broad instead
Yeah.
of just saying ferries.
It might not be ferries. Yeah.
Right, I would just say river transportation, and that kind of covers,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Could cover a
That would be fine.
myriad of things.
right?
So we'll just leave it at river transportation?
River transportation, where it
Okay.
says ferries.
Yeah.
All
It's
right.
the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th bullet down. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the bottom.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Kind of, it's kind of like river transportation and exploration, or even the word transportation is very specific about, we're talking about river transportation, and I don't put that in the tourism bucket. Like, to me, you know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking of the river use downtown. We've got the kayaking, we got the, a whole variety of things.
Oh, there are people in Portland who
Well, I had to-
paddleboard across the Willamette.
So
That's transportation.
it's somewhat specific, and I don't know exactly where it fits. It could be in livability or in tourism. But I look at our internal bus system, and I've thought oftentimes about having the buses turn and come down Clackamas River Drive, Main Street Extension, and onto the transfer station, giving bus access to anybody in the apartments and so forth.
You talking about TriMet?
I'm talking about TriMet. And so that's one thing that I've been thinking about. There's no additional bus stops between, what's that road that accesses Clackamas River Drive, that's short road?
Main Street Extension? You talking about the Main Street Extension? Or Dunes Drive?
Dunes Drive.
Dunes Drive.
There are no additional stops between Dunes Drive and the transfer station, so all the current stops would be possible, additional to drop-offs throughout the Main Street.
If you're looking for something broader, we could say transportation amenities.
I think that means something else too.
Well, it may require infrastructure investments too, so I mean, that's why I said I had a hard time seeing where that fit.
Well, it could go under infrastructure.
Yeah.
Although we don't always get to tell TriMet what to do. Matter of fact, we never get to tell TriMet what to do.
But this, of course, is under tourism opportunities.
Yeah, I think what you have under tourism is probably appropriate. I mean, what Doug is talking about sounds
Transit.
kind of like transit.
Yeah, we could add that under
coordination.
infrastructure.
Yeah, or,
Yeah.
Okay?
Doug, we're talking about adding that under infrastructure investments.
Yeah. I think that's,
so
Okay.
did we settle the river one, the river transportation? Rocky, did you have any ideas for another
than-
word?
yeah, exploration is closer than I can think of.
But I don't know what exploration means.
Yeah.
Transportation to me
Well,
means
it's-
sort of a variety of ways to access the river. You could use, what if people wanted to go from Oregon City to West Lynn without going on the bridge?
Sure. It's fine if we just remove the word ferries. I was just trying to think of, I don't know. I couldn't think of another word other than exploration, of just kind of tourism opportunities that allow visitors and residents to explore and use the river. That could be via transportation, as water ferries or something like that. It could be, you know,
Yeah, we have transportation options on, above it that says including shuttles and/or trolleys.
yeah, river utilization. I don't know. I think the Clackamas Park boat ramp area, I think that's right for discussion. And again, that's kind of that river use,
Yeah,
which is what we're,
I think utilization is a good word.
yeah.
Kind of says like we're looking for opportunities to,
So maybe it's river transportation and utilization.
or river transportation opportunities.
I like the river transportation and utilization. You're talking about
They're two
the many
different
ways that you can use that river as a resource. There are many.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty general, which allows us a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
Well, and we have also yet to get to the recreational aspect, which is the next one, which I think that would more clearly fall under as well.
Yeah. Okay.
well, I was thinking about this specifically. No, there is a plan for that, for the park, like Clackamas Park, Johnstone Park, and the Marina area. And I think we have real opportunities there, perhaps in conjunction with the Abernathy Bridge construction that's going to have. Maybe there's even some funding opportunities that could occur in that process.
All right,
Okay.
how about the next one?
Are we saying river transportation or, I'm trying to,
I wrote down river transportation opportunities on mine.
I
Or
heard
river transportation.
utilize river transportation and recreational opportunities.
Yes.
is there a consensus
Oh, and
around?
river, yeah.
Okay, can you write that down on the paper? Tourism's right behind James.
Okay. You want to go on? Or you want to?
Okay,
Yeah, tourism opportunity.
And I know we're talking about the Willamette, or are we including Clackamas River in there too?
we're just saying rivers. We have two of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't want to get, bog ourselves down there. Okay, so he's writing it. We'll take a minute. While he's doing that, let's take a look at the next one before James chats.
Are we talking about recreation opportunities?
Yep.
Okay. Recreation opportunities, the ability to establish recreational opportunities offering various types of outdoor and indoor amenities, man-made and/or natural, can contribute to a higher quality of life for residents. Investments in establishing the type of recreational investments supported by the Urban Renewal Commission include the following: trails, biking, hiking, good water quality, as it relates to the Cove, Willamette, and Clackamas River, accessible recreation at Clackamas Park and John Storm, and increased accessibility to the Cove, Willamette, and Clackamas Rivers. The four elements there.
The only one I added to mine, Mr. Graham, is I added the word walking. Just because some people feel intimidated by the word. They don't know what hiking is. They think it's like, oh, let's get out there, and maybe it's just sauntering around on a path.
Okay. Is there a general consensus with walking? All right.
Yeah. Sure.
Infrastructure investments. New investments in a variety.
Got one more?
Yeah, I have one still on recreational opportunities. It is on the trails, and I don't think that it requires an addition. But I think most people here are aware that there is actually a regional trail system and I know that Gladstone has gotten a grant from Metro to look at the bridge there. And that basic plan of the regional system takes it through our urban renewal area. And I think it's real important we identify what happens there before development gets to the point that we can't identify trail opportunities.
Don't we have that in our Parks Master Plan that shows some trails around and through through that area?
I don't know that there's any specific identification of how you get from there up Newell Creek Canyon, which is where Metro's got land, has made the purchase there of that railway easement or whatever it
Well,
was.
we'll get to ask them that tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh,
They're here.
yeah, so the identification of potential routes, I think, has to come early in the system so that we can bring it into the kinds of development that occur there and identify where those possibilities are.
That would be more, that's a lot of more specificity than the urban renewal plan because it would be in the Parks Master Plan.
Yeah, that's fine, but the point is it's going through the urban renewal district.
Right, I understand that, yeah. So basically, our plan has to be in compliance with the comp plan, which means the plans have to be, all have to sort of line up and
I understand that.
together, so.
All right. We have a general consensus as it is now? Okay.
Yeah, I think when you sentence you have in establishing the type of recreational investment, I think that applies to all of the bullet points. How do we leverage, the investment and how do we leverage that?
Infrastructure investments. New investments in a variety of infrastructure projects are designed to help mitigate the challenges of growth in the district to allow visitors to enjoy all of the amenities that the district has to offer. As visitors drive into Oregon City, the provision of the following assets will assist them to efficiently move in and around the district from one end to the other and to engage in various events and activities taking place. Public restrooms, lighting enhancement downtown, a quiet zone along the railroad route downtown, redevelopment of the courthouse, hiking and biking, walking and biking trails, adaptive reuse of existing buildings, which is the seismic, visitor parking structures, multimodal transportation.
So is there a reason we're calling out the courthouse instead of just lumping it in with the adaptive reuse of existing buildings? I mean, I know we're all interested in the courthouse but it's, it's going to go through its own process. And unless we're saying that we want to buy that property and develop it or be a partner in that, I'm not sure why we're calling that out versus just supporting all of the buildings in the downtown stretch but I don't know, I could sway me, I'm just questioning.
I suspect he has it in there because it's a catalyst for the downtown.
Well, and I think I called it out, and I
Yeah,
don't know that I have any more specific reasons other than I don't want it forgotten.
Yeah,
Sure.
Is it on the big list?
So I'm open
yes,
to
I
that
see it,
conversation.
yes.
I think there's several pieces of it, the courthouse and then the Liberty Square piece, which is kind of a parks piece possibly.
Why don't we
So
say
I guess I
courthouse-
don't want it forgotten about. I think it's
Yeah.
a big piece that we need to think about, but
courthouse properties, because that's all one lot.
well, that also includes other probably buildings that might become
Yeah, well, the court,
unused in the downtown that are courthouse uses too.
no, I'm not
There's
saying courthouse
parking areas,
use, just the
there's-
courthouse property includes the
Right.
Holman building, the Liberty Square, and the courthouse. It's all one tax lot.
I'm just saying that another reason to have it on the radar is because it may affect other properties in the downtown based on the use of the courthouse and it being replaced. So I don't know how we say that in there, but I think it's broader than just that one little piece.
Well,
Yes.
I like the word redevelopment, but I like your statement, adaptive reuse and redevelopment
Yeah.
of the courthouse, maybe in other properties.
Oh, that would work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work. Adding it into that.
Did you get that?
Adaptive reuse.
Well, it's already on there, adaptive
I know,
reuse
but
of existing
including-
buildings.
Yeah, but I
Maybe
mean,
including the courthouse.
Courthouse, yeah.
I was just trying to marry those
Just
two
do the other,
bullets.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I absolutely remember us putting it up on there. I'm not
Yeah.
questioning how I got there. I'm just wondering, this is our second round of
Yeah.
review.
Including the courthouse?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we'll just take out the other one.
Because the other one is kind of saying, to me, it's making a statement to the county, hey, we may want to buy that building or do something with it. I mean, who knows, but
And maybe we do.
I didn't know we wanted to be that specific, you
Right.
know, on this vision.
Right.
So at one point, we
They
had
could give it
8
to us
elements,
for
and
$1.
with the discussion, we narrowed that down to 7 elements, because we have now adaptive reuse of existing buildings and the courthouse.
Are we leaving seismic?
Going to take seismic out, or do we do?
I think that's the major issue for the courthouses.
It's the major issue
Yeah,
for
the
most
major
of the
issue
buildings
for most
downtown.
buildings, yeah.
It's basically seismic upgrades.
Yeah,
Right,
I'd say probably 90% of them down there need it.
okay.
do we want to call it that issue somewhere in this or not?
It's in,
It's
it says
there.
seismic, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
It does.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to add,
Did you print out the most recent copy?
I printed out on my day agenda, yeah, it's the date
Okay,
11,
yeah.
16,
Yeah, I had
2021.
suggested that
And I
we-
did go through it, but I
Since there
guess
were
it's
two
just-
versions that maybe we should have dated that so we know which version was which, but, okay.
the multimodal transportation, does that get it? It's a very broad statement.
Statement.
Does that get it, Doug, at what you were interested in earlier? About the bus, you know, I know we were talking specifically about coordinating with TriMet on the bus lines, but
Yeah,
just, does that bullet kind of get at what is okay?
yeah.
Yeah, okay, we're
Is,
good.
under adaptive reuse of existing buildings and the courthouse, is it meant to be limiting to seismic only?
I don't think so.
Oh, no,
No.
Okay, but that's an example.
Yeah,
Yes.
you could say such as.
Oh, yeah, that would be
So
fine.
we could have like, because I imagine what we run into, right, is going to be seismic, ADA,
Okay.
Right.
and living quarters,
Right.
multiple stories, so fire, life, safety, I mean,
Right.
the bigger ones that we
Right.
see.
Right,
So I put example seismic.
Okay, so but it's not meant to be limited just
no,
seismic.
Yeah.
that was not my understanding of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
It's a good clarification because it reads like it's seismic only, the way it is
Right.
right now.
It's gonna take all the
Maybe we
money.
should list some of the other possibilities too.
Or just remove it altogether.
The one specific.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah.
It's the biggest need. Okay,
Do we have consensus?
yep,
Okay. Now, there's a concluding statement, and I remember this very vividly because it was somewhere else, and Commissioner Rachel Lyle Smith brought this up. She thought that it would be better as a catch-all in the end, as opposed to somewhere in the middle, where it was before. And the catch-all is the attributes of livability, infrastructure improvements, recreational and tourism opportunities, and interdependence serve to enable the district to provide a positive rate of return and helps Oregon City solidify its status as a regional center within the Portland metro region. That was something like a catch-all, and she thought it would be best there, recognizing all those elements and tying it all in one statement.
everybody okay with that statement? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, page 5.
All right. Okay, so if we agree, then we move forward to the next item beyond vision. Now we go into the framework for decision-making. Could you bring that up, pull that up? Thank you, Jacob. Yeah. So under this category, we have program policies and guidelines. Now, this is on page 6 of your document. It's dated, the document itself is number 6. So program guidelines. So we're looking at projects. So projects must fit the vision and goals of the Urban Renewal Commission. That's a policy statement, and that's what I think all of us agreed with. Investments in public infrastructure to complement projects, not stand alone. That was something that Commissioner O'Donnell brought up and he emphasized. So that's a policy statement.
That specifically referred to things like public bathrooms and parking structures as a method of supporting and enhancing other offerings made under urban renewal.
The next item, actually A, B, should be C, a full due diligence team and its responsibility. Now, the diligence team, the full due diligence team is in the document. That includes a bond counsel, that includes financial review firm or consultant, a city attorney or redevelopment attorney, economic development manager, and city finance director. That would be the full due diligence committee. And the responsibilities of this committee is to do exactly that, due diligence, and to review these projects and do the necessary background checks as well as a financial review of the projects, an in-depth review of these proposals. So that's the general responsibility of the due diligence committee, and also to make recommendations, obviously, to the commission. Whether they approve, whether or not they could very well recommend not to approve, still come before you. They could recommend to approve, still would come before you. The next category is eligible investments and expenditures. That's according to ORS 457.
Could I go back a minute in terms of the due diligence team? Is this the requirement of the Urban Renewal Agency in terms of the actual composition?
The due diligence team?
Yeah, is that composition?
That's the composition. Now, this is a recommendation in terms of what the due diligence team should look like. And so, obviously, you're going to have bond counsel.
Yeah.
And it's important to have the city attorney or redevelopment agency attorney there, city finance director, economic development manager, and a financial review firm. All of those are extremely important components of a due diligence team, not only important for us, but a lot of other cities have the same thing for their urban renewal districts. Any questions?
Further clarification, Doug?
No.
Okay,
That's fine.
all right.
Eligible investments and expenditures. Of course, this relates to the law, ORS 457, in terms of what's eligible. Sources and uses of funds. And the sources and uses of funds I've listed on page 8 of your document, but
That's under the law.
that certainly could include equity, lender financing, mezzanine financing, and other forms of public financing. But those are obviously examples of different types of sources of funds. The uses of funds still would relate to the law. You can use those funds to acquire property or related site cost, hard construction cost, breakdown of soft costs. So those are the general uses of funds. Also, as part of this process, in terms of due diligence and sources and uses of funds, it's important that we get a number of documents from a developer or an investor. Such documents would include a performance statement of the project itself, historical profit and loss for the past 3 years, so you can do an analysis of a trend, balance sheets for the past 3 years, latest year profit and loss statement, latest year balance sheet statement, interim profit loss statement, and market and financial feasibility studies and appraisals. All of these are important documents for the due diligence committee to use in order to make a judgment as to whether or not the project is worthy of consideration. Any questions there?
One of the things that I thought of after we met was maybe we should say in the document, and maybe it's here somewhere, I read this again, what urban renewal does not fund. Because I think sometimes people get confused about things that it cannot do. and not everybody's going to go and read ORS 457.
And I think, I believe I put this in this document. The law says, the law basically says that, well, it does say that you can spend certain funds on certain things as far as the law is concerned, but it also says if you don't see those things, it's not eligible. So, and the law actually does say that.
Yeah.
If it does, so if you don't see these things, it's not eligible.
Yep.
The but-for test. The but-for test is actually a well-used best practice across the country. Obviously, we're not supposed to be doing projects.
It's on page 9.
That's on page 9. You're not supposed to be really doing projects to improve someone's profit margin, or you're not supposed to be doing projects that a developer or an investor really doesn't need your money. He or she simply wants the money just to do the project. But there needs to be a gap, and we need to be able to use this type of funding to fill that gap. So that's what but for is for all of it. So but for the project, but for this financing or help, this project would not go forward. Any questions?
Can I go back to page 8 because I had one question?
Sure.
This historical profit and loss for the past 3 years, does that preclude any business that is not as old as 3 years from making an application?
What is say that
If
again?
they've only been in business for 2 years, what do we do?
Right.
Oh, I see. They've only been in business for 2 years. Well, I think,
Then I'd be nervous.
I understand that, but you might have somebody that's actually doing a redevelopment project there, and they have some available funding and so on.
You mean like they formed a new LLC and that's only been in business for 2 years or something like
idea,
that?
yeah.
Then we'd be looking at what they did when they were not in that.
All right.
it's, if they've only been in business for 2 years, in that particular business, they may have been in other businesses. And their financial situation might be well-suited to do the project. So, I would simply base it on their experience and their financial capability.
I would say, just from my experience, Mr. Neely, that we want to know everything about whoever it is that we are, and I mean everything. And again, if they were in a lot of times when people are doing projects, they form a specific entity to do that project, but they were in something else before they did that. And we would be going back and looking at that documentation as well.
Right.
Just we have to protect, it's a CYA test. We have to protect ourselves.
Next, a question about B, the public infrastructure to complement projects and not standing alone. Can you explain a little bit more about what it would require in order to complement a project?
Sure. Like, for instance, as an example, there might be a hotel. And beside that hotel, you might very well want to park. And so the park and the hotel complements each other. And so the park doesn't really stand alone, right? And in some cases, the developer will pay for the park to get the hotel.
I guess I'm just thinking about our desire for like downtown parking, the quiet rail zone, the public restrooms. Like, to me, those are public infrastructure projects that, is this saying that they have to coincide with a specific project in order for them to be built? Like, it has to be tangential, like directly tied?
They would be.
And your example of a parking garage is a good example. Because if you say that there's a hotel or several hotels and they all need more parking. And so therefore, you could actually require them to build a parking garage.
Well, I guess my issue, in that hypothetical, sure, I can make the case pretty easily, but I'm thinking there's quite a number of people who believe we need downtown parking right now, a parking garage, and it's not necessarily tied to a hotel or something like that. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of pick at that one just a little bit and see.
So one of the reasons that that's in there is, I think, from some of my comments, and so I think that's a very good point that you're making. I was trying to come to a way to point out issues that have been issues in the past. For instance, spending urban renewal on City Hall, or specifically just a park, that in my past experience on the Urban Renewal Commission, I would not have supported projects like that and don't support projects like that, but I could see supporting a project like that if it was definitely connected to something. The parking garage, I think, is kind of separate from that, although it is definitely public infrastructure, so I wonder how to call those out a little bit different. It's like, I wouldn't want to see us spend urban renewal just to build a park, and that's the only thing that's happening, and it's not, connected to some other development.
That kind of example may not align with our vision and goals, whereas like a parking structure, public restrooms, I mean, we've just called them out in our goals. So I'm just trying to make sure.
To word that differently, that makes that distinction, maybe, I don't know.
Commissioner,
I'll comment on it because I brought up public restrooms, and I brought it up for a reason. If the goal of this city is to be a tourism destination, and I just came back from a tour of California, so I was in Monterey and Carmel, and I guarantee you, every one of those cities had a public restroom. So I mean, if you're going to promote tourism as a general approach, at some point, what you don't want is reviews that say there's not even a place to go to the bathroom unless you impose upon a store owner. So that becomes a suitable expenditure in the pursuit of an economic development goal, in my mind.
Right. I just felt like that not stand up, like to me, I agree with you, and I would love for that to be a project, but with that not stand alone, to me, that is a standalone project. So I felt like maybe we weren't.
Structure?
Or a restroom, I just feel like that's in conflict with maybe what we were trying to.
But see, I see how having a parking structure and a bathroom are interrelated to all the other projects that we would be doing in a particular area.
I think they are too, but.
There's connectivity to me.
You could add a word. You could say project or goals, and one of our goals is become a tourist destination.
Yeah. Like I said, that's why I asked for Mr. Graham to explain what he meant by complementing a project, and his examples were very specific ties to a hotel being built or a restaurant, which is a very good reason. So anyway.
I agree. I don't know how to word that, or, kind of, but we'll think on it, I guess, how to
So
explain
I think
that better.
we don't want that not standalone piece in there. I think that.
Is it in the paper? This is on his PowerPoint, but I don't see that statement in the document that we're looking at. Is that statement in the document?
The statement's in the document, and it's also Commissioner O'Donnell's statement as well, when he made it
let's go to that page, because I'm not finding it right at the moment.
But what he said and what you described what is on the slide, but what Commissioner O'Donnell just said to me is not what you said is on the slide. So I feel like we have a disconnect, and I didn't find the sentence either. I was looking for it to see, but it may be in here.
I don't see it in there.
Let me see if I can find it here.
And that's why I said something like goals. Our goal is to become a tourist destination.
And that's a key.
Under the guidelines and project evaluation criteria, so at the very, very beginning of this
On
section, in the second paragraph, the 1, 2, 3, fourth line down. In addition, investments in public infrastructure serve to complement other projects and are not standalone type investments. So it's embedded in the narrative.
So I think it's that sentence is that it should be investments in public infrastructure serve to complement other projects and the urban renewal goals, and just leave it at that.
Yes.
And remove the and are not standalone type investments.
And the urban renewal goals? No, that sounds awkward a little bit.
Or some version of that, but remove the and are not standalone type investments.
I agree with you. It's
Well, why don't we just say
encompassing, and
period
it gives you
after
the
project?
latitude to do what you need to do in pursuit of a goal, which is to make this city a revenue generating, value enhanced center. And you have to have that addition to promote that tourism piece. So
Well, how about if we just put a period after other, to serve to complement other projects?
I'm going to find the sentence.
Page 6, second paragraph, fourth sentence, starts with in addition. He's just highlighting it.
Well, is tourism a project in and of itself?
I think that's why we were talking about adding goals.
Pardon me?
I think that's why we were saying add goals.
Yeah.
That's why I like goals, because it's a little bit more encompassing, gives you more latitude,
Yeah.
still staying within the intent of the law.
So say it again. So you're saying add the word and urban renewal, URC goals?
Something similar to that. In addition, investment in public infrastructure serve to complement other projects and implement urban renewal agency goals.
Okay, that's fine.
Neat, something like
Does
that.
that sound right?
Yep.
Kind of where we want to be?
Okay.
I wanted to add, if I may, Mr. Graham, add something about what Commissioner Neely was talking about. So we might want to state that if the development team hasn't been in business for more than 3 years, that we have the right to look into other projects that the main ownership has done to prove their, basically, ability to do, I don't know what the word is, their ability to do the project.
Like references, like project reference?
Let me ask you, do you really want to get to that level of specifics?
No, I'm just saying we need, that, you know, we can say, not that specific, but we could say, you say that, you know, the 3 years, but what you're really talking about is we're going to look back at whatever they're doing. Even if it's not that particular entity, they've obviously done other things as well. I mean, as I said, many of these organizations, they will form an LLC for that specific project, but they may have done a whole bunch of other things, but not under that specific LLC because that's not that project.
And, you know, and I think we could get to that point where it's in, I think, page 8.
Some,
Where we list all the different types of financial documents and statements. Matter of fact, because you're right, it's commonplace for a developer to create an LLC.
Right.
But there is always a major company standing
Somebody
behind an
that.
LLC.
And again, like you said, it can go into this, what you're looking at when you're looking at their background and all of that. That's all I wanted to say, is that's really where the better place for it to go is there.
Yeah, right there on page in that bottom area.
I know what you're saying. I mean, we're saying about, what about that company that's been in existence less than 3 years?
What else have you done for me lately?
It doesn't say how to deal with that.
No.
And if you're saying that companies who, as a company, have been in business less than 3 years shall be reviewed, we will review the major participants in the previous companies that bonded together. We will look at their success and what they have done.
Exactly,
To
yeah.
see if they bring the expertise and a demonstrated history of success. So we may have 3 companies that bonded together to form one. What have they individually done? And I want to dig down into that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was saying, that maybe the better place is in what we're looking at for their references and all of that. Because if you look at, you know, you have Wells Construction over here and you have Skanska over here, and then they formed a company called Skanska Wells to do the development of the light rail. But when they got done with the light rail project, they went back to their original entities because they only formed that for the light rail project. And when light rail was done, that entity was done.
So we could actually add to say background and experiences, or experience.
Yeah, background experience and other major ownerships that they've done
I
in the
think you're
past.
probably trying to get to the applicant and all major investors, and major investor is over
10%.
whatever, 10%, 15%, pick a number.
Yeah, we're not, you know, we may not be going back just 3 years. We may be looking further than that.
I just want to
I think you can work on that wordsmithing, but I think it's understood what
I
we're
mean,
talking
you understand what we're saying.
Yeah.
I think the due diligence team, if you put together the right due diligence team, they would have the expertise to go back and take a look at a project to determine whether or not the developer or investor has the wherewithal to make the project successful.
Yep.
But if in fact 3 companies bounded together to form one, I want the ability to delve into the history of those three individual companies. I want to give you, or any of us, this board, the opportunity to look back and go, you know what? Two of those companies are on firm ground. One of them was near bankruptcy when they formed this. Or these companies individually have histories of success in these type of projects.
And this one doesn't.
Cumulatively, they should be great. I want to give us, I don't want to restrict our ability to dig down if we have to see who we're dealing with. So I don't know how you want to word that, but I want to be able to know who the partners are and what, all we're looking for is a demonstrated history of success and a track record that done projects successfully.
So we can say background experiences of all involved,
Sure.
entities and persons.
Yep.
Yep.
And we want references.
So I think you can put that, and then to solve the 3 years thing, you could put an asterisk on those two bullets that have the 3 years and put a little asterisk note that says, in the event that a company is newer than 3 years, we will collect yada, 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 the
Yeah.
stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
a good
and
way
just
to do
come up with a note that, because what this group is clearly getting at is they want that spelled out in this document, what happens if they're not older than 3 years, 3 years or older.
And they probably won't be because of their forming to create a project.
You
So
never-
they
you
wouldn't-
never know.
They wouldn't be there.
Okay. Anything else before we go forward?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay.
I have questions about the due diligence, but maybe you're going to get to that in more detail, or what's
Well,
next?
let's talk about that now. I mean,
Okay.
You're talking, yeah.
The only thing that I thought was a little bit confusing was this in the text, and so this is just a general comment, was this introduction of a due diligence team, and then when you got to the diagram, there was this split between the full due diligence team and a partial due diligence team.
Yeah, that's-
And I thought, I understand what you're doing, and it totally makes sense, I get that. I'm just wondering if there's just a better way of wording it to make it, because then it made me question, I went back up and I was like, well, is he talking about the full due diligence? Did he leave out the word full? Or did he just mean due diligence team? So it added a level of confusion that I think we could probably clean up in this document if folks were going to read it. So that's just a general statement. Otherwise, I agree with where you're going. I think it's the right direction. I understand why you did it that way. And I think it's great. I just felt like that could be, I don't know what you want to do. Maybe it's a preliminary review team.
yeah, well, I on page 11, where it says preliminary review,
Oh, look, there's preliminary review.
page 11 on the document itself,
Preliminary review.
preliminary review, then we designated as a partial team. Only three professionals are there instead of the bond counsel and the other entity. It's a partial review. It's a partial team for a preliminary review because you do not want to involve bond counsel
No,
at this level.
I understand that, but earlier you specify full due diligence team, and then underneath that, a little bit further down, you just say the due diligence team. So are you talking about the partial due diligence team or the full? Again, I just think that you could come up with a different name for this preliminary review team or something that would make it super crystal clear which team is acting, and you don't have to worry about whether or not I've called out the full due diligence team or just the due diligence team, like who, you know what I mean? Like I was like, on one hand, you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see exactly
Okay.
what you're saying. I see exactly what you're saying. Okay. We got it. So anything else before we go forward? The but-for test, I think everybody's clear on, agreed to. Jacob, yes, thank you. We go to the next one. All right,
It's the one after that. There you go.
there we go. The DDA. Now, the DDA sometimes DDAs can be as many as 60 pages, but the DDA is really the legal document that codifies all the terms and conditions of the deal. And so it identifies how the district's assets will be used, whether it's land and or funding. And there are different forms of funding a project, as you know. One could we could fund a project from the general obligation bond perspective or debt. We can look at a pay-as-you-go tax increment financing whereby the developer pays all the upfront costs, and all those costs that are eligible, we would reimburse him or her for their expenditures. And then the loans, you can make loans to have a program where you make loans to certain kinds of entities, as well as grants. So you have the full array of options here. So the DDA will define what you're going to be using at any point in time. And also it includes clawback provisions. If something doesn't happen in a certain period of time, you can also require certain types of penalties against the project, or against the developer, or against the investor. Any questions?
I don't have any problem with the general obligation bond because that's actually defined even prior in this document, the one that requires a vote of the citizens. The pay-as-you-go, I'm not sure how many projects follow that form of financing because that's a little bit indeterminate based on the success and project increasing in value fast enough to pay off indebtedness.
Well, I've been in projects where a developer where the project was approved, but it took too long for that money to come forward. So that developer went forward and made those expenditures up front with the promise that they would be reimbursed for all the eligible expenditures under the law. That can happen.
And I get that. I'm just thinking in terms of those who are very strict in their definition of urban renewal will say that it needs to pay bonded indebtedness.
Oh.
And I'm not sure how they feel, particularly about loans. If I read the definition of loan, UR district is making them a loan, period, out of existing funds in our war chest. And I think that's one of the bases for I know we prevailed in the earlier lawsuit, but it's up for review probably in the next year about do we stand with the earlier court decision or do we get a reversal? So I'm a little worried about that component.
I guess the question would be, what if you went out and took out a bonded indebtedness, right? So you took out some type of a general obligation bond and then made grants out of it. So you've taken out the debt, you're paying back the debt with the TIF,
So you took out a general obligation bond?
and then you're making loans or grants out of that funding. You know, this is, I think, part of the discussion we have to have about what are we sending to the vote. But so I think Commissioner O'Donnell, what you're saying is that if we just have the tax increment financing coming in, can we just make that and turn that into a loan? Or can we only use that for tax to pay back the general obligation bond?
And the second one is a position of those who would oppose. And then I read the please note section on page 6. Based on the current city charter, the Urban Renewal Commission of the City of Oregon City shall not issue bonded indebtedness longer than 1 year without voters' approval. So I'm a little sketchy on that part of it. The clean way, of course, is a bond is approved by the people, and then we start to use those funds that we've accumulated to begin the payback of that, and then rely on TIF to be able to sustain that payback. I think that's it in purest form.
That's what Prosper Portland does. They issue GO bonds. They use the TIF to pay back the bond. So they're not lending any direct tax increment financing dollars. That TIF money goes to pay the bond.
Agreed.
It's very clean.
Yeah, and that's
But from those bond proceeds, they can make investment in property, grants,
Yeah, they use the bond proceeds to do all the projects, and then they take the TIF and pay that back.
right. And that's clean.
Very clean.
And even like, I don't know what we currently have in the Urban Renewal Fund, I think it's 3 million or something like that. I think the opponents say you cannot just give that to the developer, but you can use that to service a voter-approved bonded in
debt, exactly.
To kind of get things started, and
Yes.
then as the TIF grows, we continue to pay
Right,
from that.
right. That's what most of the urban renewal, if you go to the Oregon Urban Renewal Agencies, that's what 90% of them do.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind that these are simply guidelines. I mean, because the future might, who knows what the future will hold? But the future the future may develop in such a way whereby it allows you to use all these options at your discretion. That's one way of looking at it, because they're guidelines. That doesn't mean that you have to do these things. It simply are in the document as guidelines. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, if you restrict yourself too narrowly, you may limit yourself unexpectedly.
I guess I partially agree and partially disagree, because the sale of the GO bonds finances the loans, finances the grants. Also, the proceeds from TIF pay back the GO. So the GO bond does all of those things that you have underneath it. My experience is that none of those are ever done separately. Mm-hmm. The loan funds come from the proceeds of the general obligation bond. So each district would have so much money based on the bond sales for that particular, because we had 11 districts, so you can imagine having to keep track of 11 different general obligation bonds. Got hairy at times, but that financing is fairly clean, and all those other things you have underneath it were created because they had bond proceeds to do the loans, to do the grants, to do the storefront improvement grants, to do the rehab buildings, do the seismics, all of that.
So are you two, both of you, saying in that loan section, you'd like to remove some of those words that say the source of loan funding may come from existing cash generated by the urban renewal district, and remove that text and just leave it and just say the source of loan funding may come from funds raised through the issuance of general obligation bonds? Is that what you two are saying?
Yeah, you could say that.
That's what I'm saying.
I think that's what you two are saying.
Yes, that's what Frank and I are saying.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
And even the opponents will actually agree with that explanation, that you're using funds to service the loan that's been
Right.
approved by a GA bond.
Right, GO, yeah.
Yeah, the way it reads now, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. It looks like you can make a direct loan.
Right, it does read like that, so that's why I was saying it sounds like,
can.
is there general consensus to? Okay.
So there's consensus to just focus on general obligation
I
bond.
think that's how it works.
Okay.
That loan funding, essentially you'll remove those like 8 to 10 words there. The source of loan funding may come from funds raised through the issuance of general obligation bonds.
Gotcha.
That very last sentence in that loan
So you're
section.
taking out or,
I'm taking out the, from existing cash generated by the urban
Right,
renewal district.
okay.
Right.
Okay,
General obligation.
got it.
Okay, gotcha.
Sounds fine with me.
And then we'll take out grants and all that. Is that right? Take out grants?
No, we're leaving
No.
grants in.
Okay. Okay. All right, any other questions? Now we go to the interesting part where there's a chart here, and I'll, here.
Frank's getting excited.
Flow charts are usually pretty clean.
I hope you can see this, but I know it can look strange, but we just didn't have enough. I mean, keep in mind, this is like 30, 40,000 feet above the ground, and I didn't want to include every little detail because I wouldn't have enough paper. But it starts off with the process on one piece of paper. The process starts off with either you can entertain a project as a commission, or you can actually put out an RFP yourselves for property that you already own. However it comes to you, those are the couple of ways that you can entertain a project. Then when you move from that, and then you have the partial due diligence review, by the partial group. And they'll review it, and then they'll make a referral to the Urban Renewal Commission for its review. Now, at that point, you could say to yourselves, do we really want to do this project or not? And if you make that kind of decision early on, it saves a lot of time on yourselves and also the developer investor. So that's what that's there for. If you say no, then there's no further need to consider the project. But if you say yes, then the entitlement process begins for that investor and all the departments that are involved therein.
And what does the word entitlement entail? What is covered under entitlements?
Well, you have your permits from the planning department and
Land use application.
your review by maybe a building official, or all the different types of entitlements, depending on where the project is at the time. We have all these various departments that do their due diligence on your behalf. So that's what that would include.
So you're usually checking zoning, you're usually checking, if you're going to have a 5-story building with X thousand square feet of office, that requires X amount of parking. You start getting into permitting costs, system development charge costs, what type of infrastructure is going to be required, what kind of half-street improvements, do we need new water, sewer, storm? So it's trying to refine what the cost of the project will be through identifying what it's going to take to put a rough estimate at, a 30% design on a project.
What does the word approved encompass? Approved by whom?
If all of the entities involved, if all of the entities involved approve the project from their perspective, then it's approved by planning, or it's approved by building or code or zoning. It's approved, and it goes forward to a more in-depth analysis by the full due diligence team. And so therefore, that's where all of the research starts, in terms of the background. Do they have enough funding to do this project? Do they have enough have enough experience? Do they have are there issues in their background that might question their capability? All those kinds of issues come up at that point.
So I guess approved might not be the...
Yeah, the word approved.
Maybe approved is not a right word there.
Recommended, maybe?
Well, it's usually not binding, right? I mean, we're doing pre-apps at this point, engineering's involved, but they haven't necessarily gone through the land use approval process, if that makes sense.
It does. What I'm actually thinking about is at some point, these projects are usually so large in scope that they require significant funding,
Right.
generally only obtained by probably voter approval of a measure. Where does that action fit into this flow chart?
Right.
We would have had the review before we get to that point.
We would have had the voter approval.
Yeah, so we have a list of projects, and
Well, I guess I'll preface this, right? This could change, because after we get through this, we need to come back and have a discussion about what are we sending for approval?
Right.
right,
Are we sending a total amount of money? Are we sending a plan? Are we sending a certain amount of money, a certain number of projects? So this could change
yeah,
depending on how that conversation goes, right? This is, either in this scenario, we've already got approval to spend money to take on the debt,
right.
because this is already down the road and we're a year ahead and it's been approved. Or, potentially as part of the DDA, it's going to require voter approval, which will make it really, really difficult on projects.
So that's almost a decision point on the flow chart.
I think depending on how we decide to move forward with what we're going to ask for voter approval of to do.
I see.
Because if we said, let's just say, we're asking for voter approval to take being approved to authorize the total amount of available indebtedness, $70 million. And if that's approved, then I think you don't really have to change this too much because you've already got it. If we decide in our next conversation or when we have this, we want to send every project to the voters. So this project's asking for $15 million and we're working through this and we have to send that to a vote. We would have to rework this whole thing because we would have to know from the developer what the ask is, and then we would have to schedule an election, 9 months to a year out.
Yeah, and that's a different question to me. My brain is going to, the broader question is, let's say we want to ask the voters if we can pursue a general obligation bond in the amount of, well, let's just say $10 million. I'm just throwing a number out. And that would include these types of projects.
Right. And so, like I said, I think.
I know, I mean, it's a good conversation.
I agree that there's probably 15 ways what we send to the voters could come out depending on what the commission decides.
Because I think the way you're describing it, where we get an idea of a number and then we hit. So I know when the agency decided it was going to sell bonds in order to fund the projects that were listed in the plan, that happened like during the process of putting together the budget. The bond sale was occurring at about the same time, so that when the fiscal year started, the bond sale had occurred, the money was coming, we had the budget, we had the line items, and then we went and spent the money, the bond proceed money. So that's kind of how it worked on the back end. That happened way before, and then we would put out requests for proposals or people would come in. It didn't happen after the fact. So we already, we made sure we had the money in hand to go do, whatever the list was that we had.
So that's the next conversation.
Yeah, that's the next conversation. But I'm seeing, in my mind, I'm kind of, going through the logic of, okay, I don't want to have to go to the public every time some Tom, Dick, or Jane comes in and says, I've got this project and I want this amount of money. It's like, no, we can't be doing it that way. We have to plan ahead on what we think we might need and then say, well, this is all we have and this is what you can get, or this is what you can get, or whatever.
I would simply say that in the future, that's going to be an interesting conversation, because if you put out a multitude of projects that you may like to spend this money on, so you're basically asking for pre-approval, I think the chances of success in a vote become minimal, because if you like 2 out of the 3 and you don't like the third one, your vote is going to be a no. And that's
well,
why
it's not going to get that specific, because how can we be that specific? We can say we want to, let's say whatever it is, it's general.
Oh, you say we want the voters to give us approval to spend up to $10 million on projects of our choice. And
No, based on whatever we have in the plan. We have a list of things in the plan.
Can I call it time out? This is why we wanted to delay this conversation.
Time out, okay, I'm backing off, okay. I was just trying to do the process in, a mind map here, trying to get all the pieces that we're trying to go together. Okay.
I guess I'm wondering, I don't want to spend a whole lot of, this is a general flow chart.
Right, general.
We can tweak this. How about if there are general questions about it? Because, like I said, I do think, depending on how the discussion goes on how we want to vote, this potentially changes a little bit.
Why don't we call it the preliminary project team? It gets reviewed by the preliminary project team.
And I assume the appeals thing that we see there is to the city commissions, since you're looking at what the planning.
It's land use.
Yes, land use, so that's, the appeals process is through the city commission.
Or the planning commission, or whoever. Whatever.
Well, okay, yeah, that's right, yeah.
It's whoever is the quasi-judicial body that's reviewing whatever it is.
Okay.
But at some point, there has to be a thorough review of the project by the full due diligence team. Mm-hmm. And then if the due diligence team says, we don't like this project and these are the reasons, you still see it and you hear the reasons why. If the due diligence team says, we like this project, here are the reasons why, you still see the project. And it comes to you. And then at some point, the Urban Renewal Commission will make a formal, there'll be a public hearing, I would imagine, on a project such as, And then after the public hearing, a decision will be made by the Urban Renewal Commission. And if it's a go, if it's no go, no deal. If it's a go, you have a deal.
It wouldn't necessarily be a hearing, James. It would just be a public review where we would say, yes, go forth and do it, or no, we don't think this is a good fit for us. We don't want to do it.
Right, but you would have a public hearing at some point, wouldn't you?
It's not really a land use thing.
I guess.
So it's not a hearing. It would be a public review.
Just say public meeting,
Yeah.
remove the word
Public
hearing
meeting.
Yeah.
and change it and make it meeting.
Okay, public meeting.
And then I think there was some heartburn over the word approved in your workflow. Maybe it's
We could use another word.
recommendation or
approved.
something.
Yeah, I said recommendation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, recommendation would be a good. Okay.
My question to you, Mr. Graham, is this workflow, in your experience, one that's usually acceptable by developers? Like in their investments of money and stuff like that, like, or have we reviewed this with any of the development team or any groups as far as them agreeing with where they're spending money and the amount of this money they would have to do? I mean, is this, you see what I mean?
Yeah,
not what this chart
most developers would appreciate knowing whether or not this project's going to go. So that's why I put it up front. Because they would be spending an enormous amount of money and at the end, not even know. So that's why most developers or investors would agree with this kind of approach.
So you've used this type of
Yes.
workflow before, or you've asked some developers that this workflow looks good?
Yeah, this workflow saves a lot of time. Yes, I've used it.
Okay.
I have also as well, I was on the Central East Side and Interstate Urban Renewal Preliminary Project Review Team. We would do exactly what you're talking about. We would vet it, we would talk about it, then we would make a recommendation to the full team, which included at that time one of our PDC commissioners, and then that team would review it. And then it would, if that passed that muster and the finance people, then it would go to the full commission for approval. But that's kind of what happens in the you know, the back room there, so to speak, with vetting it and looking at all the information that we've requested, as James has listed in this document, and more.
I guess the one thing I would like, maybe just work with James a little bit on some of the terminology, make sure that we're, entitlements versus pre-app versus approved versus recommended, or,
Yeah.
there's nuances there.
Yeah.
I do have a question on the flow chart. You got the in-depth review application by full due diligence team. You've only got one arrow coming out of it. You don't have a no arrow. I assume the one coming out is the yes. But if you'll have an arrow going down to the no, can issues brought up by the due diligence team have the opportunity, and they say no, but does it have an opportunity to change something in the process that makes it go back to the due diligence team? That is, if there was a financing thing that was an issue, and they say, no, you can't do it, but can they go back then and see if they can fix it, and then come right back into the review of the due diligence team, rather than sending it all the way to the beginning of the process, or something of that nature?
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, so if the full due diligence team reviews an application, it's going to go to the Urban Renewal Commission for renewal, either yes or no.
Right.
Oh, okay.
That's why there's only one arrow, because it's going to come with a
Right, so
recommendation.
it would be yes or
So
no.
I guess Doug's question would be, is there an arrow back? If the urban renewal, staff says no, Urban Renewal Commission says, well,
Fix this and
if
this.
they did this, this, and this,
Yeah,
Right. Sure.
we may consider it, so send it back to the due diligence team.
Right.
Work on these three outstanding
Okay.
issues, then bring it back again.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
yeah.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Yes, that could happen. It
So,
happens.
yeah, you could solve that in your diagram. I love these little diagrams. You could put you could put another box of a conditional deal.
Yeah.
And so essentially we're making conditions that you fix these things. If you're just trying to keep your workflow simple and not do
Yeah.
iterative loops. I agree with Doug. It is kind of confusing, the no and the yes and the arrow. If it stays in this,
Yeah.
you may have to put some
Maybe it's just staff recommendation.
yes.
Yeah.
So are you saying that if it's a yes, that the full due diligence team will then create a DDA when it's on its way to the URC, or
We would look at it before that.
because you have the DDA partnered with the yeses, so it's,
Exactly. So what happens in this situation is that if the due diligence team likes the project, they will do a full DDA draft so that you can see the full document. That's what that means. If they don't like the project, they won't do a DDA, they won't go through the expense, but you'll still see the project, and you can determine whether or not you still want to do it. And then it goes, if you want to do it, it goes back to the process.
Right. So it'd be very clear, it's not about whether they like it or not, it's about whether it meets our criteria, our standards, it meets the goals, it meets the due diligence that the due diligence team has set forth, and they're going to come in with a recommendation, they've checked all these boxes. I mean, I'm being metaphorical here. Or, gee, they failed here, and this is why we're not recommending it go forward because of X, Y, or Z.
It may not even meet the, maybe it may not meet all the vision, maybe a piece of it or something, I don't know, but.
It might not meet all, yeah, and if you don't, and if the team doesn't feel comfortable with that, they're going to say, hey, we don't think this is the deal for us. And it's perfectly reasonable for that to occur.
Any other questions? Okay. We're moving on, project scoring. Now, this is, thank you. Now, here again, you have your goals, your 4 goals here, and then there are weighted scores. Now, this is simply an example. 20% for livability, that's just simply an example. You can change that to something else. Tourism opportunities, 10%, recreational opportunities, 30%, infrastructure investments, 40%. We just did that just as an example. But you can change your weighted, how you want to weight these things. And so, and then in your document, in your packet, you have an example of a scoring sheet. And that scoring sheet also lists the major goals, and then you have those various elements of the goals. It's the same thing. You basically circle back. For instance, livability. And when you look under livability, you have the same elements of livability as you did earlier in the document. So you get the opportunity to say yes or no, yes or no. It's either a yes or a no.
Oh, great.
And
I don't think we need any of this.
say again?
I said, I don't think we need any of this.
Okay.
Because we could have a project that comes in that's completely all tourism. Say it's a hotel. And it's going to zero out on like 3 or 4 of those categories and be knows the majority of the way down there. And it could say, oh, I'm providing dining and I'm providing hotel. And so I think it's going to score really bad. If we're not comparing these projects to other projects or whatever, that's just my opinion. I just look at this and I was like, I don't need to weight them. Something could come in that's 100% recreational, and you're saying it's still going to only score at a 30%, which to me is a failing grade. So, you know what I mean? Like
Well, look,
that's just where I'm at.
I don't have a problem with it.
all of you will have as an example, all of you will have an opportunity to score the project. And then, of course, we'll take the average. And say that say that you don't want to do a project that's anywhere below 75%.
But we could easily have a project that's only 10% because it's only tourism.
Yeah,
and
well,
only
he's saying
checking
those
the
are
box.
just examples. I would weight them differently, but that's just me. He's using this as an example.
Right, it's only an example.
It's not saying that's what it is.
Okay, let me rephrase. I can't think of any scoring criteria method that makes me feel like I need to score it like this. I feel like it either meets our vision and goals or it doesn't. Unless we're comparing and ranking projects and prioritizing them and all this kind of stuff, I don't feel like I need this checklist to give it yeses or nos. Now, that's just my personal opinion. If someone else wants to propose something other than this, have at it. It doesn't do me any good, and I can think of a whole bunch of projects that will end up scoring poorly because the way the scoring sheet, it's pitting each one of these goals against each other. I don't know. I just don't see the value in it. That's just where I'm at.
I agree.
I agree.
I like it, but that's okay. That's just me.
Well, I would agree with the mayor, or what Commissioner Lyle Smith is saying, especially because with all of these goals, there are inevitably ones that fit into several boxes. And so when I look at this example, I see a bunch of recreational things under tourism as well as under the recreational opportunities. So I think it's heavily, and I recognize this is just an example, but there are just so much interconnectedness here that I think if we try to silo them off, that it's inevitably going to be weighted toward one of these goals more than the other.
So why were you thinking we needed to score them? What would be the desired outcome or goal? Just to make sure it meets our vision and goals, right?
To force us through a process
Right.
of acknowledging the goals that we're all working on and the vision that we want, right? Because I think some of the concerns we've heard is the subjective nature of the way monies have been spent and awarded in the past. So if we're not going to force ourselves into a process of ranking and checking boxes, how do we have that? How do we make sure that our goals and our objectives and what our vision is gets incorporated into our decisions? Is it we take out all the scoring and the applicant has to write a narrative response, kind of like a land use application addressing? Is it
I don't want that.
No,
Is it just that this commission kind of looks at it and says it feels right, so let's go, which I think we were trying to avoid because we heard concerns about that.
Yeah, we don't want to say that.
I think we can have a simple questionnaire that says, does this project meet livability, urban renewal livability goals? Yes or no? Does it meet tourism opportunities? Yes or no? For us to fill it out, because so most of us have all done the Metro enhancement grants, and this should be bringing back memories from that experience, right? And we know what happens when the applicant fills out the check boxes. They check like all of them except for like one, when we're like, what? So
I guess I would just, I think that, how do I say this right? I think that forcing an applicant who's coming in to ask for potentially several $1 million from the city and making them fill out how their project
that's true. There's
meets
value.
our goals, forces them to think about our goals.
Exactly.
I wouldn't,
Well, they can do it, and then we'll do our own.
I would certainly, I would put the onus on them to
Yeah.
demonstrate to
If
you.
this is something the applicant is doing, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, not,
Yeah, I mean,
well, they're gonna score, they're gonna get like 130. But if we went to more of a narrative of how are you addressing our livability goals, right? And force them to incorporate that into their design and their narrative or their offsite
I
improvements.
like that.
yeah.
Rather than us
Meeting this
taking
goal
the
because we're
onus,
providing a
finding
trail.
it in their
Yeah,
application.
this trail, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
I like that idea. I like that suggestion.
Is that something we can work around?
No, definitely. Once again, this is only an example.
Yes. I'm sorry. I shot down your example.
Your preliminary
crashed
scoring
I'm not
sheet
married
can
to
be
it.
used internally. You can use your preliminary scoring sheet internally.
And that's true. But I'm not married to it, it's just an example.
You just pass it off to the Metro Enhancement Grant
Yeah,
Committee.
this would be a good one for Metro.
My favorite night.
I know.
But I know, I feel the same way.
It was my
It's like,
favorite
oh, gosh,
night.
we're having the same conversation as we did.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right. Then, with that said, that's all we have for tonight.
Okay, so should we take some official action? Mr. Conkle? I'd like it to be I'd like it, it's in a box right now. I'd like to put the bow on it.
I think we still got a little bit of work to do.
yeah, I
On
think
this-
they need to
on
bring
this
it
part,
back.
On this part.
Yeah,
I think we'd like to clean it up. I mean, this is gonna become a portion of our new urban
Right,
renewal plan.
exactly.
We still got the financial component that we need to complete, and then we need to have a discussion about
the vote stuff.
projects
Right.
and the vote.
But
Right,
this
so I
is
mean,
part-
I guess
This is part one.
we're getting close.
I know,
We're
I
getting
want
close.
to put a bow on this part of it. So we got a consensus for them to go back and clean this up, and we'll move on to the next topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we're good.
Yeah, because based on the discussion today, there's not a lot to clean up, just little bits and pieces, and that's an easy matter. So if we agree in terms of a general consensus, we can move on to the next thing.
All right, let's do it.
Well, I've got to go out for a drink because I told my wife it'd be at least 2 hours.
Okay, fine, I'll go.
We can go out for a drink.
How about
Would
that?
the Urban Renewal Commission like another setting like this, or go back to before commission meetings for these discussions on finishing this plan?
Did you notice how fresh everybody was? They were not tired.
6 o'clock on a different day, I don't know that it matters.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I thought this worked well.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
if we have to take care of regular business, like having to vote on something, we can do it just before the commission meeting, which is fine, but this was a much better setting.
So we'll send out another doodle poll for an alternative date.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Are there any further communications?
No, ma'am.
Anybody have any communications they would like to bring before the Urban Renewal Commission that involves urban renewal? All right. May I adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
Do it.
meeting is adjourned. Thank you.